not every day you get to come here and see the President of the United States land in your city.
From the parking garage at PDX to the side of the road along Marine Drive, locals gathered to catch just a glimpse of the President in Portland. It is 5 o'clock. I'm Jeff Gianola.
And I'm Jenny Hansen. The president departing minutes ago after a packed 4-hour trip. He touched down at 12:40, greeting Democrats on the tarmac before touring the new terminal at PDX, then at Oregon Air National Guard Base. He spoke to a crowd that included Portland City Commissioners. After that, the motorcade moved north to the Portland Yacht Club. That was for a DNC fundraiser before heading back to PDX.
Well, we have team coverage of this presidential visit. Liz Burch heard the speech at the National Guard Base. Brandon Thompson at the Yacht Club, speaking with protesters along the motorcade route. And Elise Haas is standing by at the airport. Let's switch to Elise right now. And Elise, the president departing just about 15 minutes ago. I know you were there and witnessed it.
Yeah, it was about 4 hours from touchdown to takeoff, Jeff. But this really is what a modern presidency looks like on Air Force One. Traveling the country, seeing people, and fundraising, which is what he did here in Portland today. And it was just moments ago that we saw that motorcade making its way down the runway in order to make sure that the president could get on Air Force One safely. And just as quick as his trip was, the moment his vehicle rolled up, he hopped out and boarded the airplane. And of course, the rest of his team went with him as well. And it was just, again, probably within the last 20 minutes or so, we watched Air Force One take off. And on top of that, while we were waiting for him to take off, there was, of course, the fighter jets that were going off prior to that as well in order to make sure to keep him safe in the air. So we're continuing to, follow up on all of the remarks that he made today, too. And of course, like you mentioned, he was touting his infrastructure plans, especially here at PDX.
And at least I know that he was inside that area where they're building that new roof that's just hundreds of millions of dollars. Tell us about that and what he spoke with the construction workers about out there.
So he did have a chance to get inside the terminal today, and that's where he met with a lot of construction managers who are really overseeing a lot of the projects that are going on at Portland International Airport right now. And if you have been at the airport any time recently, I'm sure you have seen it, whether that's trying to get in or out or just being inside the building itself. But also there's a lot of projects that we don't see, and that's what the president wanted to see up close and personal. And a lot of that is about the resilient runway and making sure that our runways will be able to withstand an earthquake. So in the terminal, he met with construction managers. He also got to see a lot of programs and projects that were up that he could visualize that as well, and then learn about the sustainability measures that they're taking here at PDX. So a lot of the money and federal funds in play, and he's seeing it in action. And I think another big thing is that we thought, he was going to be talking about the I-5 bridge because that's so big to us right now. But I think that the president is really trying to focus on projects that are happening now to show that his plan is working and in play, and he doesn't really want to talk about things that are maybe 3 years out in the future.
And hyper-local to us. All right. Thank you, Elise.
Well, all roads closed for that presidential visit are now back open. Marine Drive open in both directions at this hour, as well as Northeast 122nd and 33rd Drive. The visit did not disrupt any major thoroughfares during those few hours.
And Brandon Thompson still out at the Yacht Club. And Brandon, the event there was for DNC donors, but there were crowds that were out there too.
Yeah, we saw crowds of some protesters near the edges of those road closures, and we also saw some supporters and some families just really trying to catch this historic moment. Like you say, 7 years since the president has visited Portland, and some people just wanted to get a glimpse of the motorcade and the beast, that limo that the president travels in, and they got a little bit of that look. And we saw some fundraisers and donors walking in and out. You saw the office holders at the National Air Guard Base, and we saw some candidates here at the fundraiser today. Sitting on the steps right there in front of the Yacht Club was Tina Kotek a moment ago, and we saw her walk in. I'm not sure if Tobias Reed was here as well. Those are the two Democratic candidates for governor. And we at least saw Tina Kotek here, but really it was a lot of just wanting to catch that moment. Some parents with their kids just trying to catch a glimpse of the motorcade here. And as soon as it happens, it all ends very quickly. That road you see is back open. It's been closed for days, and that's just the nature of a presidential visit. It's over as quickly as it came, it seems, after hearing about this for a little bit over a week and just trying to wonder what the president is going to talk about here, and at least gave a good breakdown of that. But yeah, some people are just excited to try and see and catch a glimpse of the president. We saw some flags sporting Trump 2024, but also some some thank you Joe signs as well. We saw one of those at the yacht club today. So that was kind of the mood, just trying to catch a little bit of that historic moment of when a president comes to town and just trying to feel like you're in the proximity to one of the most powerful people on earth.
Yeah, well said, Brendan. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat, independent, but to see Air Force One, to see that motorcade is really a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Brandon, at the yacht club there, thank you.
All right, now to that speech. Biden hitting several hot topics today, like inflation and the war in Ukraine, but of course, focusing on his infrastructure plan. And Liz Burch was out there for all of it. Liz, joining us now live. The crowd has cleared, but he covered a lot today. There were a lot of lawmakers in that room with you.
Yeah, crowd's gone, but we are still here in the hangar where he gave that speech. He was certainly speaking to a crowd of supporters. Here, a lot of enthusiasm from the people in the crowd today. As for the speech itself, it's exactly what the White House told me it would be yesterday. He focused his speech on funding for airports, specifically building an earthquake-resilient runway at PDX. True to what the Deputy Press Secretary told me yesterday as well, he did not talk about the I-5 bridge. We did hear some unexpected comments directed at Mayor Ted Wheeler, who was here as well, telling him being a mayor is the hardest job in politics. President Biden ended his speech on a hopeful note about recovery. Take a listen.
Anything's possible in America. Anything's possible. And that's what we're going to do today. Do what we are capable of doing. Stop feeling sorry for ourselves. Get the hell up and take this country back in a way that we lead the world again, because we can do it. Appreciate it.
President Biden also talked about the economy, blaming Russia's Vladimir Putin for our inflation and rising gas prices. The president also highlighted job growth under his administration. I mentioned this was definitely a speech for his supporters. He did not take any questions from the media, and let me tell you, there was a lot of journalists here.
Yeah, strict schedule. Thank you, Liz.